I'm actually going to start with creating or getting our file before we go into the software we're going to be using today, which is Slicer. So I'm hoping that you've all downloaded Slicer successfully, and you've got that to work with, because it's more of an interactive session, this, where we'll all do this together. We'll take our time with it, but at the same time, what I'd like to do is just to show you how I would actually take a file from an online resource, an open source platform called Thingiverse, which we probably used before, certainly for the Mesh Mixer one we did recently. And we can go on there, we can download all sorts of different things. But the shark that we're going to work with today, I've already sent out, or rather Sophie sent out, an STL file, which is a three-dimensional file that's already been pre-prepared. And the reason I've done that is because a lot of the times when we download from Thingiverse, it's not actually a solid model. Sometimes the model is just a surface and there might be faults in it. So we can't really rely on the people who've put things on there, that these are actually going to be useful models. And the shark was actually not a solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you Thingiverse and how to download. You've probably seen this before. I'm going to do it very, very quickly, and then show you, if you do have a problem, if you open Slicer and try and import and nothing happens, I'm going to show you how to make it into a solid. So I'm going to start off, hopefully you can see this. I'm going to start off just by putting Thingiverse in my browser, and I'll follow my way to the site. And I do know I have got a link for this, but just to show you how good this is, I'm just going to go up to the search engine and just put shark in there and hit enter. And I know there was a particular shark here that was a problem, so I'm going to kind of scroll down now and look for this. I think it might have been on the second page actually, so just hit page 2 there. And as we go down, we can see all of these sharks that people have actually put on here. And then we have one that says collect thing, and I think it might be this one, great white shark. Can I have a just look at the next page before we carry on? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that one. So as you can see, we have so many files to choose from. Now these are free to download, but we have to be very careful because intellectual property, we should really not make any money from the whole point about this is it's completely free to download and we can do what we want with it. For educational purposes, it's fantastic, but you can't kind of make something and then sell it. That's the thing about intellectual property we have to remember. And of course, when you've got this, we can just click download all files here. Now we're going to come back to Thingiverse later, and I'm going to ask you to choose anything to download and use. But for the start of this session, I'd like you to use the shark model that's already been given to you, that's already been sent to you, because this is already a solid. So I'm going to download the file, and it comes at the bottom corner of my screen in a second. There it is, great white shark, it says there, and it's in a zip file. Now a zip file means that we can't just kind of open it straight, or we can't search within it. So what I'm going to do is drag that zip file onto my desktop here, and there it is. I'm going to open that up. And there we have our great white shark, and it's a folder. So I'm going to open the folder, and then inside we have these models. Now there's a number of models here, so I'm going to have a quick look at it now. And we can see Mesh Mix 2, and another Mesh Mix there. So there's different kind of versions of this. I'm going to take that second one here, Great White 2. And I think what I'll do is I'll take it out of the zip file and just drag it onto my desktop. The reason I do that is because when we have a piece of software open and we try and open something, and it should be here somewhere there. Where did it go to? Let's just open that up again and see where it went. Great white shark, Mesh Mix file. Let's take the top one. Put it down here. And there it is, great white. Of course, I didn't see it for looking. There it is there. So we've got a file on the desktop there. The reason I say we have to take it out of the zip file is because when we open our software, now it's over here, Slicer. And I double clicking on that, and it opens up our software. and now we can import it. If it's in the zip file, it won't see it. But if you take it out of the zip file, you'll be able to search for it. It's a little bit confusing this sometimes. It doesn't show you the desktop immediately, so you might have to kind of open this up and go and look for it. But basically, this is my desktop here, and I can see great white there. So I'm going to left click on it and open. And we'll see if it opens. And this one did open, actually. Let's see if it slices, though. So I'm just going to try something very, very quickly. Select a technique. And I'm just going to go for interlock slices here. And it did actually work. So this is a different file than I've used before, and it actually is workable. So I'm going to close that down there. So what I've done is I've already sent you a file. I'm going to close that actually from scratch. But you do find situations where you can get a file that won't open. And this is why I've already pre-prepared one for you. It's a little bit confusing, I know, but if you're using Slicer, and you bring a model in and nothing's actually happening, it's because it's not actually a solid. And the way that 3D files are created is it could be a series of lines and surfaces that aren't actually perceived to have thicknesses. And when you do have that issue, then we have to resolve that by making it solid. And I can do that in Mesh Mixer. You can just bring it in, and there's an editing function called Make Solid. It's as simple as that. So I'd like us all to open up Slicer for Fusion. We have a blank page, so we're all at the same stage. If anybody falls behind, please just shout out or raise your hand, and I'll stop and I'll go back a stage and so on. So the first thing I want to do is bring in our model, and the very first thing we do, if we look at the top left here, and I do apologize, the text is really small on this screen. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably just go around with my cursor and just go in circles just to show where it is that I'm kind of pointing to. And it's just the term import there. There's a little tab there. I'm going to left click on import, and that opens up a dialog box there that I can look for my model. And of course, it's the shark edited OBJ, and there it is. I'm going to left click and open, and our shark appears on the screen. It's a little bit ropey, this. If we look in, you can see that the edges are a little bit frayed. I don't mind that so much with it being on the end of the fins there, but that's a result of the process of making something solid from a surface. A little bit complicated to say, a little bit confusing, I know, but it will come in handy when you do have a difficulty and you don't know why it's not opening. It won't open if it's not a solid. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just looking at my mouse and I'm moving around. I'm using my right click on my mouse and dragging around, and I can kind of move my shark around. Similarly, I can go left click on the box up here, just like in Fusion 360 and in Mesh Mixer, and we can move around by kind of moving the box itself. But I find right clicking and turning around is absolutely fine. If your shark comes in at that angle, you can see a shadow underneath. If it comes upright and so on, we can actually move it, but I don't think it makes a difference, to be quite honest. So what I'm going to do is, this is our model. I'm going to consider, first of all, how big this shark is. Now, the wood that I'm going to use, I'm going to make this out of plywood. We can make out of perspex, plywood, anything that can be cut on a laser cutter, really, with a thickness. And I'm going to go for 4mm plywood, and we buy that in sheets, and the sheets are 500 by 375, I think, in terms of the size of our sheets. And what I want to do is use one sheet only. Because if I use a sheet and a half, that's wasted material. So I'm actually in the top of my head thinking, how big shall I make my shark, knowing that it's going to be sliced up and all those parts are going to be cut out? And I'm thinking round about 400. So the first thing I'm going to do is make from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail 400 millimeters. And the way we're going to do that is with this kind of area on the left-hand side. I'm looking at it now and it's in inches, possibly because this is from America, but I'm just going to, where it says inch there, I'm just going to left click on the arrow next to it, the diamond, the triangle next to it. And I'm going to move that to millimeters, just because I'm more comfortable working in millimeters. And now we can see that the width of our model is 203 millimeters, or it's actually 203.2. And that's the size of the model as it came in. What I want to do is make that 400. And what's going to happen is if I kind of hover over that 203 and then left click and drag, make all that live, and then just type in 400, 400. Once I've done that, I'm going to hover around into the gray area here and just left click. And now the whole thing has become 400 from tip to nose, millimeters across, and everything has actually scaled uniformly. Now, if that hasn't done that for you, I just want to show you there's a uniform scale dot there, and that's actually been ticked, or rather it's live. You can see a little dot there. You can actually click that off and click it back on again. So I'm just going to wait to see if anyone's got a problem by rescaling before we start. I'm going to use the wheel of my mouse just to kind of scroll in and out. Right click to move around, just to make sure that's working. And I can actually press down on that wheel and move side to side and up and down to pan, kind of dragging this thing around. So we can kind of move around it quite easily. So I haven't heard anybody say anything, so I'm going to assume that we've all now got our shark 400 millimeters across, which should, I think, when we've sliced it into lots, fit into one, I'm hoping, one or two sheets. Whatever happens, I don't want lots of wasted wood at the end of it. So what I'm going to do is, now that we've selected our size, don't forget we can change that size at any time. And I find it just as quick, if everything stalls when you try and go back, I find it just as quick to just start again, just import it again from scratch, make it a different size and carry on from there. What I'm going to do is now look at my material. So I've just mentioned I had 500 by 373 by 4 millimeter thick. So I'm actually going to get that material and put it into this software. Now you won't have this, I've got it on here, but if you look at the very top, when it says manufacturing settings, underneath there, and I'm just going to move so you can see where I'm working, it says letter 8.5 inches. I think that's a default. I'm going to open that up, and we've got all different, we can go all the way down the bottom here, we can go up and down. These are our different sizes of materials. Now next to it on the left, there's a little pen, which means edit. So I'm going to left click on the little pen there, and we've got this box that appears. Now I've already got my material down here set up. So what I'm going to do, I think, is delete it. That's right, so it's not there anymore. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a new material to this, these manufacturing settings. What I'd like it to be, you can see there's a plus there, as you can see on the left-hand side. So I'm going to left click on plus, and it opens up an unnamed tab. And I'm going to call that, if we click on it, double clicked on it there, and it's gone dark blue, so I can type in what I want, plywood. Okay. I'm going to put 4 millimeters, which is my thickness, then a times, and this is 500 across, and times 375, I think it is. And then I'm going to press enter. So I've now got a field on the right-hand side, which is linked to the plywood, because this is what's live at the moment. So on the right-hand side, we've got this column. All of these things relate to the plywood settings. Now it's in inches again. So I'm going to go up to there and I'm going to click that. And I'm going to change it to millimeters because that's what I'm used to.
Hi Ian, just to interrupt,
Yep.
we've got 2 raised hands.
Yeah.
One from David and Angela's.
Hi, yeah, you sort of went 3-7. Was it
3-7? 375. I do apologize. I'm so sorry. I can actually do that again if that's.
Please, because I tried to do the name in blue, but
Yeah.
instead of writing down anything, it goes up to the P, and I don't know what's going on really.
Okay. Well, what I'll do then is I'm just going to highlight that and delete it all. Then I'm going to close it all down and say I've done. I'm going to start from scratch. Okay. So at the top here, it says letter 8.5 inches. I'm just going to hit that little edit thing there, and we get this dialog box here. I'm going to add a new material. So where it says plus at the bottom left, I'm going to left click on that. Yes. And it says unnamed. If I type now, I don't think anything's going to happen. It's a light blue. So if I type P, it goes to the P, as you said. So what I'm going to do now is where it says unnamed, this is our new one, I'm going to double left click on that to make it live.
Name.
And now it's a darker blue. Yeah.
Okay, now got it.
Excellent. And that's all it was. We just needed to double click on that one. And I'm going to write plywood, 4 millimeters times 500 times 375. Hopefully 375 millimeters. And that's just the title. We could have called it anything really, but it just gives me that information. So I've got plywood 4 millimeters by 500 by 375. So now I've got that. This information on the right hand side relates to what I've just titled. So I'm going to leave it live, and where it says units, I'm going to change from inches to millimeters. And now I can see there's an automatic setting in here. The length is 279, the width is 215, and the thickness is 4.5. I'm going to change those now to suit my material. So that 279.4, I'm going to make 500. The width, which is 215.9, I'm going to change to, and again, 375. Okay, and now the thickness, and this time you only have to click on it once, by the way, and then I can drag across there to make it live, or you could backspace and type in what you want. I'm just placing 4 in there, 4 millimeters. And then I'm actually done. But what I'm going to do is just show you part of a model. This is falling apart at the moment. So this has been cut on a laser cutter. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to stand up, so hopefully you'll be able to see the join between the two. Can you see that? The way it interlocks? Now, it's impossible. If I've got 4 millimeters thick, this is 4 millimeters actually. If I had a 4 millimeter gap through here, it's impossible for that to go through and actually fit because it needs a tolerance. Now, this is the really interesting thing about Slicer. If you look further down, it's actually got a slot offset at 0.254 automatically. So what it's done is it's automatically figured out the offsets needed for this to actually slot together. And I think you can change that as well, but I'm going to leave it at that setting. So all I've done really is, just to recap, I've set up a material. I've changed it to millimeters, 500 by 375, and at 4 millimeters thickness. And then I'm going to assume that everything else is preset, will be absolutely fine. So this shark is going to be sliced up, and drawings are going to be created that are going to fit onto the material size that I've just put into the software. And then you can load up all your materials. You can have like huge pieces of wood or cardboard or all sorts. You put your thicknesses in and your sizes. And this is our stock size, as I say. When I buy in plywood, I'll buy in pieces of wood about that size. I'm going to click done. Left click on done. So now when I go to the material settings, the manufacturing settings at the top here, where it says letter, we've got a drop down little arrow there. I'm going to left click on that. And if you slide that, slide it all the way down, at the very bottom here, we can see our plywood, 4mm by 500 by 375. I'm going to left click on that. And now we've selected that as our material that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm just going to wait for a second just to make sure everybody's got to this stage before we go on. Now what I'm going to do, it's really nice, this software. It only opens up fields on the left hand side when you need to get to them. So once we've done this, it says construction technique and select a technique. We're going to go through these together. I'm going to open it up. There's a little next to select a technique, little kind of triangle there. And the first one is stacking slices, stacked slices. I'm going to left click on it. And that has now shown me what this would look like by stacking up slices next to each other. And it's also given us on the left-hand side drawings. It's not very big. I can't make this any bigger, sorry. But on the left, you can see there's 3 sheets, 83 parts, and they're all stacked up together. Okay, and you can see these actually aren't that let's say clever. What I do is I export my drawings out, and these 2 that I can see on the right hand side, I could actually move to put onto the bottom one and actually just physically put them on there. So it'll only be 2 sheets we'd be using if we wanted to do that. And that's fair enough. So that's one way of constructing our shark. At the moment, I can see there's lots of things in blue. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I suspect, as we look around and go in here, not quite sure why that is in a darker blue, because it may not be a problem to make. So not sure why that's in a blue, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to carry on.
Hi Ian, just jump in. Mohammed says that it's saying it was unable to process this model when they followed what you were doing just then.
Because if we've got a smaller piece of material setting, if it was on letter, for instance, at the top still, you know, a small letter, and I tried to do that, it wouldn't be able to do it because it's too big to go on it. So I'm wondering whether it wouldn't process it because we hadn't actually got the plywood. Could we double check that? At the moment, let's just wait for a second just to make sure everyone's happy before we go on to a different construction method. Because the slice thing is all well and good, but what I'm interested is interlocking things.
It says, so the message, after the message, it was unable to process this model. Mohammed says the tool diameter is 0.
I've got a similar problem as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
was going to ask the question on, you know, when you put the plywood details in,
Yeah.
and then you change the materials to make them fit your materials, right? And then you talked about the tolerance.
Yes. Yeah.
Right underneath that, there was a tool diameter button.
Okay. Let's have a look at that, shall we? Let's have a look at that. Let's go into our editing.
I'll just say that mine's been at 0 and I've had no problems with that.
Yeah. Just open the plywood there. And now this is the different things here. We have thickness, we have horizontal margin, vertical margin, a slot offset, and a tool diameter. Mine's set at 0.2.
Yeah, mine is, but it's not coming up.
Yeah, I mean, really, we're not using a tool for this. We're using a laser cutter, which doesn't have a diameter at all. So I'm just going to click done. The only thing I can think of again is to double check that it says plywood at the top here in our material settings.
Yeah, it does. Mine, I've got another message just come up saying Slicer for Fusion 360 was unable to process this model. Some mesh issues can be fixed using shrink wrap tool from the modify form panel.
Okay. So it seems strange to me that it may not be a solid then. And that's possibly why. You remember I was saying about that I sent everyone out these OBJs because I pre-checked them to make sure they were good models.
Right.
If it's talking about mesh tools, then I think it sees a problem with the file itself. So what I'm going to do, and I know this seems a bit crazy, is I'm actually going to start again using the same OBJ that you're using. that was sent to you. Are we all doing that, I assume? And it won't take me seconds to do, because obviously it's very, very quick. I'm just going to say I don't want to save it there. I'm going to open that up again, but this time, instead of using the great white shark I took from Thingiverse, I'm going to use the edited shark folder that we've all got, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. I'm going to open up Slicer. Okay, I'm going to import shark edited obj, and this is exactly the same file from you guys as well. So first thing I'm going to do is scale. So I'm going to go to my object size. It's inches, make it millimeters, and then the width, which is 203. I'm just going to type in 400, and then just click anywhere in the grey area, and now that's changed my scale. Right. Next thing to do is go up to where it says letter, and drop down here, and then go into edit. And I'm going to click plywood as though I'm actually setting it up now. And I'm going to go through these units just to make sure there's nothing we're missing. So let's make sure that we've got the same thing written down for everybody. I've got 500 in the top where it says length, 375. Make sure the dots are in the same place as well, everyone. So it's 500 dot 000, 375 dot 000, 4, and I should say point rather than dot, shouldn't I? 4.0000. Horizontal marking, I've got 5.08. That's an automatic figure that's just been put in there. Vertical margin, 5.08. Again, it's an automatic parameter there, which I'm just leaving. Tool offset, or slot offset, I should say, is 0.254. And tool diameter, 0. That seems to be okay.
Just really quickly, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going back and double checking as you were reading through all of that. Where I originally changed, when you scaled it to 400,
Yeah.
I had done that originally, but it come up at, for some reason, at 39999.99999.
Okay. Had you changed it from inches
I
to
haven't
millimeters?
changed it. I changed the inches to millimeters. I've
Yeah.
just over typed it again at 400,
Yeah.
and my shark come up all sliced. So I don't know if anyone else has got the same thing. My shark's there now with
And it's
all the
working.
examples.
Yeah. I can't tell you why it would change like that. But all I can say is that if we all double check our figures now, just to make sure, I suspect the reason why it wasn't working is because we were trying to make something, maybe our material wasn't big enough for what we were trying to make. And that's why it wouldn't process it. So if we just double check we're all the same there, I'm going to click done there. Double check on my width, and that's 400, so the size is correct. And then I'm going to drop down to choose my material. It's really important. It says letter at the moment. It's still set as letter. So I'm going to now left click on plywood. So I've got the scale and I've got my plywood selected at the top here. At that point, let's go to our first stack slice, and there it is immediately. Let's go to our next one, which is interlocking slices, and it's worked.
And I've got mine's working now as well. Great.
And yours is working as well. I think it's to do with just double checking. I don't trust machines. You type something in and you go back and it's something completely different. I'm not sure why it would do that. The only thing I could think of is perhaps the uniform scale wasn't switched on.
Right.
Maybe one thing was changed, but the others weren't. Perhaps, it's an odd one, but there's lots of little things we have to look out for. So now that hopefully we've all got our shark with interlocking slices, it doesn't work very well for me, this, because the slices, it's been sliced at a certain angle. What I want to do is where the slices are going along the shark, I actually want to bring them upwards so they're interlocking in a more kind of useful manner. They're kind of interlocking through the front as we look at it. You can see this crisscross here. I think it'd be more beneficial if the axis of that link was different, and I'll show you it first. If I demonstrate it and then go back and we all do it together, that's probably better. I'm not quite sure where it is. I seem to remember it's slice direction, which is down the bottom here. Underneath all this, I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4th from the bottom. It says slice direction. Don't do this at the moment. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to left click on it. The reason I'm asking you not to do it is because I'm not quite sure myself. I think looking at this, we've got a blue circle and a green circle. It's the blue one I want active. So I'm hovering over it. Now this is a bit tricky to make sure we're on the right one, because if I go to this, the green one's active. I want to come slightly off and then move this one around. And can you see what's happening to the slices, the directions? And I'm also seeing that it's telling me that's 55, 60, 65. It's actually minus 75 as I'm going around here. I want to go to 90. And then I'm taking my finger off. Now, the reason why I said I'll do this myself and then we'll all do it together is because you have to click with a PC, a left click, and drag it round and then take my finger off. Might be slightly different with a Mac, but it's one of those confusing things. But basically what I've done is change the slice direction from straight across to up. So what I'm going to do is going to Control Z, and we're going to do this together. Control Z should actually. Let's see if it will go back. If it won't, that's a bit of a problem. I think I've got undo up here. Let's see if that works. Yes, it has. That's great. So to get this live here, I went down to slice direction and left clicked on slice direction. And then what I had was this situation where I've got two. I've got a direction here and a direction here. I don't suppose it matters that much, but I'd like us to use the blue one. And perhaps if we can kind of go hover near where it is, go on the blue one and just start to drag around. And I had to do it a second time. I had to do the first one to make it live and then click on it again. And I've still got my left click on, and I'm going down to 90, 85, 90, and there it is. And I take my finger off, and that's done. And now when we look at our model, we've got something that A is a little bit more useful, and B has only given us one sheet that we're working on. We're not finished yet though, because as you can see, there are certain things in blue that are impractical. They're impractical because it won't work. It won't slide together. So it's telling you there's a problem there.
Ian,
David
was wondering why some of the slices are in red.
Some slices are in red because they're useful and they'll work. Some slices are in blue because it won't work. And we're going to change that. We're going to actually edit this so it will.
Okay, and Angelus has just raised their hand. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yes, when I'm trying to move the arrow, the blue one,
Yes.
it goes to the green circle instead to go
Yes.
around to the blue.
Well,
I don't know how, I'm trying, but I don't know how to pick it.
Yes, I mentioned that as well. I think what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll do it for you again.
Okay.
If I come back here, now we're in the same position. I think that we've got this arrow there. I'm going to go to.
Yeah, I just got the green. Okay.
Can I just ask how you do the undo, because Control Z doesn't work?
Yes, if you go to what it says slicer at the top left, there's an arrow forwards and backwards, and I just click the undo there. Now, for some reason, I've only got the blue one here rather than both. So I'm going to go back again until that disappears. And I can't really seem to get back out of. Oh, there you go. I'm back out now. I've got the green one and the blue one. Okay. Now, the way to do it, I think I've just discovered myself, is to actually left click on the blue one first. So it's highlighted, and then drag it. Okay. Now, if I come off, I can actually left click on the green one and I can take that around. So the idea, I think, is to left click or highlight the one you want to move first and then drag the direction. This actually might seem a little bit frustrating, but it is the best way of learning, because even though we might feel that we've got through okay, to see these problems, I didn't know that I had to highlight it by clicking once before I dragged it. I thought I kind of get it by just clicking until what I want to do works. But it's actually interesting that if I highlight it first, then I can move it. To go off, I'll just click off in dead space and I can highlight the other one. And now I can move that one. So I've got a lot more control now than I've ever had before, thanks to you guys. So thank you very much for that. So now we should all have, and let's face it, the slices here, we haven't decided on these slices. This is an automatic reaction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask us to change the amount of slices in each axis. At the moment, if you look on the kind of left-hand side, we've got a blue arrow which says first axis 10, and a yellow which says second axis 9. Look what happens when you change that second axis from 9 to 4, and then click in dead space. We can see now we've only got 4 slices running through this way, and it's impossible. It's not going to click together at all. So obviously we need more than that. So let's go back to 9 again. And then click in dead space again. I'm just left clicking anywhere in there, and it's now back to 9. Now we can only see 3 useful red lines. We can see 2 which are kind of grey. Now that means that it will work, but it won't interlock. It'll kind of rest there, but it'll still work. What's in blue won't work because it's impossible for that to connect in the real world. Also, let's have a look at the other one. Let's look at our first axis, which says 10. Now these are the ones that are going down across. We can change that 10 to 4 and click in dead space, and now we've just got those 4. Again, absolutely impossible. Now you can see the problem I'm talking about with the fins. There's nothing to actually link them to the central model. And so it's showing that in blue, telling you there's a problem there, but it's still given us a plan for it. Now I found before that the best result was 11 on both. 11 going this way and 11 going down, because when I was preparing this, I spent a long time messing around with it. So I'm going to put 11 for going down, to put them a little bit closer together, and I'm going to put 11 on the top one. Now I've got 11 going that way as well. But you can see there's a bit of an issue at the bottom here, and we're going to resolve that now. And also, if we have a kind of scroll in now, we can have a look how this is going to work. Can you see, as I'm scrolling in, this section here, this slice, is kind of at the edge of the fin. I'd really like that to be a bit further into the center. Now we can edit and modify this form. And I'm just going to start with this one, okay, this slice section. You can see now, as we go into it, I can highlight it. And notice when I click on it, can you see this on the left or right-hand side, I should say, one of our sections has become live. It's become white. You can see it's white in comparison with the others. Let's just go to the one next to it and highlight that. And another piece has gone white. So as we're looking at these, we can see we've selected one. I want to modify my form. So underneath slice direction, there's a modify form icon there. I'm going to left click on it. I'm going to move around now. And I think I'll be able to just grab that. And can you see it's moving forwards and backwards? If I zoom in, you can see what I mean. I can grab it and move it quite freely. And this is the wonderful thing about Slicer, is we're not stuck with what the computer says. I can actually grab, it's on the same one actually. So what I'm going to have to do is click off it. Click onto the next one, which is highlighted, go to modify form again. And now when I go in, I can move that one just a little bit further back. The one that I'm really interested in is this one. It's the one that's actually not connecting the fins at the side here. So I want to move that one. So what I'm going to do is click anywhere in dead space. So I've got my cursor again. I'll come down here and click on that one. And now you can see down the bottom here, we've got this one that's sticking on there. And I'm not worried about this because it's telling me that there's 2 sheets that's going to be used, but I can see there's loads of space on the top sheet for me to physically move that up later on when we need to, just to save space. So the reason why we've got 11 both ways and we've made it 400 long is because all of this will fit onto one sheet with no kind of waste. There's some great designs out there that look fabulous, but the amount of waste material that goes out of it, it's really kind of a problem. So let's kind of zoom in a little bit and move this slice forwards and backwards until it's actually covering more. And don't forget, we can glue these as well. More of the objects as we go through. And we can see it's just touching different places. And I might have to move this one as well. So as I go in now, I've got it covering 2, but not the end ones at the moment. But I might be able to do without those, or we could perhaps move them. But you can see now I've got a situation where I can move this so that it fits both of the 2 major ones there. And I probably forget about these. So it won't really add anything to it. Okay. So I think I'm probably quite happy with that, to be honest. With these 2, let's just kind of zoom in slightly. I think it probably wouldn't add to the finished thing. So I could try and move them in and out or move them forwards and backwards, but I think I'm just going to ignore it. And if I go on to it there, you can probably see somewhere there'll be a tiny little component here that I'm just going to ignore. I'm just going to leave it as it is. So looking at that, I think that's going to be my model. Parts in red, as you can see, the central parts there, it's very happy with. It's not so happy with the ones that aren't red, but it's not actually showing it as a problem. However, the 2 bits at the very bottom are shown in blue. That's an impossibility. But if I use glue with my model, there's no reason why those won't stay in position. So hopefully now what we've got is our shark, and we've edited it. So we've got it in the right position in there. Now there's lots of other things we can do. But I think what I'd like to do is take this all the way through to show you all of the functionality, and then maybe we'll go back and have a little explore in terms of different construction techniques. And then I think we should have a break. And that will be coming up pretty soon, just because 2 hours is a long time to sit. I'm only talking 5 minutes. What I'd really love to do is get to the stage where you guys can be comfortable with this and then download your own model from Thingiverse. I'll do the same. So we've got something to watch if you don't want to do that. But if you just want to bring any object in and slice it up, and then I'll go from, instead of leading and like tutor-led, it'll become more like me supporting you guys in what you're doing. The other thing we can do as well, if you remember, is we can change the direction of the ones going down. I've just realized, so that they're angled slightly, which might help with the fins, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to go back to the slice direction and look at that blue one again, and maybe just go up ever so slightly as I'm looking at it there. Maybe a touch more to about there, maybe. Okay, now I can edit the form again and just bring this one slightly forward. Modify our form. It's only the same as what we've just done, but it's just making it a little bit more. Modify form. I think I have to select it first before I modify it. There you go. And I can go in now and modify that. And I could have gone a little bit further to get that more angled. But you can see now I've actually almost got the bottom bits as well. Not quite as good with that part there, so I might have to select this one and bring that one back. Modify form, but you can see what I'm talking about. We've got lots of ability to change the way this model is constructed. I can bring that one in perhaps there and probably bring another one in. Might actually be worth adding another one at this stage. So where it says, not sure if we can actually, let's go back. I don't think we can. Once we got to this stage, don't think we can actually open it. You can see I can't really go back now and change the amounts. So maybe I'm just going to go back to where I was. I'm kind of overcomplicating matters a little bit here, I think. And I'm just hitting that until we're back. Let's see, there's lots of different things here going on to where we were. So there. But you can see we've got lots of ability to change and to adapt for our design. So at this stage, when we are happy with it, we're happy with what we've got, and I'm not saying this is perfect, we can go to assembly steps, which is underneath modify form. I'm going to left click on that bit, and at the moment it's showing it us in cardboard. Okay, and we can change that. So instead of cardboard, because it's one of the most common materials that we use with Slicer, it's actually made for things like cardboard, plywood, and laser cuts, and maybe acrylic. So at the moment, on the left-hand side, at the bottom, we can see the word cardboard. We can change that to plastic, and then you have it in a kind of acrylic, and we can change it to plywood. I'm going to leave it as plywood because that's what I'm going to be working in. We've also got, at the moment, a kind of a sliding animation here from the start to the end, and it's set at end at the moment. I'm going to left click on that slider and drag it back to the very beginning. And what we've got is one sheet, one flat sheet that's going to be cut, and a drawing on our right-hand side that relates to it, which is highlighted in white. And so we've got that one drawing. This is lovely because I actually film this sometimes with really complicated things. I film the thing being made. So I've got a kind of a key on how it goes together, because otherwise what you get is a kind of jigsaw that you're going to have to figure out. And when it's really complicated, that is quite a thing to do. So I'm actually going to go down to the bottom with my slider, and I'm simply going to go along. And you can see now another one is coming in. Now, before it comes into place, I'm also seeing on the right-hand side, you can see that figure has gone in white, the small one, and that goes into place. And another one now is coming into play. And on the bottom right of our top drawing, we can see that particular one. Now that's not going to come in through that, but it is possible to feed it through, as you can see, and that goes in like so. Third one, fourth one, fifth one, and so on. So the middle ones, it's telling us that we should do those first, right the way through. And once that's done, of course, we can bring in the larger ones that come in from the top at the moment. You can see that on the drawing as well. And that's how this will be assembled. And they're the two little bits there. So it's telling us exactly, not just giving us a drawing, but it's also telling us how it should be put together. And at that point, I'm happy with that. I'm going to get the plans. So at the very bottom here, and it makes sense, doesn't it? It's almost like filling in a form, isn't it? So you go down to the very bottom, and it says get plans here. Now, this is our drawing, top one and bottom one. I'm going to take them both out, knowing that I can physically move these later on. This one can go right into this space here. That one I can slot down here if I wanted to, leaving loads of space for this one to be placed up there. But that happens a bit later. I think we'll do that actually in part of this. And this is more of a demonstration part at the moment. You can take your model out at the moment, but I'd prefer you to play with it a bit first before we take them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop to the bottom here, and the file types. Different machines prefer different file types. We've got 3 to choose from. We've got EPS, PDF, and DXF. Now our laser cutter likes DXFs. I'm going to save it as that, but I'd save it as all 3 because you don't know maybe which machine is going to be cutting it. For instance, at Exeter Library, there's a laser cutter there. You can actually take your file in to the Fab Lab there and have it made for you, or you could bring it to our Fab Lab. It could be made anywhere. So I'd actually save it as all three if you want to save that model. It gives you more possibilities. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose DXF because I know that's the one that's going to go to my machine. But in future, I'd probably suggest you back them up with different kind of sizes. There's only three to choose from, different formats, I should say. As soon as I went to DXF, it changed to millimeters. I'm not going to go to export to Fusion. I'm going to export to my computer. So I just want to put it onto my desktop. So I'm going to left click on export to my computer. There. It's a zip file, just like it was when we downloaded from Thingiverse. And I'm going to call it Shark. And then I'm going to put the date after that because I'll know which one it is, 0804. I'm going to just pop that straight on my desktop and save. So hopefully now I've got a zip file with this inside. Now my laser cutter software won't recognize it because it won't see into that zip file. So what I've got to do, of course, is have a look for that. And there it is, Shark 0804. If I open that up, and I've got two drawings, remember we've got two. So I'm going to open the first one, there. And the second one, I'm just dragging them onto my desktop, hoping that when we look now, we can see Shark 0 and Shark 1. The two drawings are actually on my desktop now, which is great. So just to prove a point, just before we have a quick break, I'm going to open up our software for the laser cutter, RDWorks. There. Now you won't be doing this. This is something that we do. You send us files and stuff, and in the Fab Lab, we will take those files and we'll get them ready to be sent to a laser cutter. CAD is the drawings that we've got. CAM is the machine. I'm just going to import my drawings. So File and Import. I'm going to take the first one. I might be able to get them both in actually. So there's the 0 with most of it. There. I might move that to one side and see if you can bring the other one in as well. File, Import. It might replace it rather than amend it. Let's see. This is the smaller one. And there it is. I'm going to move that across slightly. Okay. Now just see what this software has done. It's really clever. It's given us a blue line, which is a cut line. So we can set our cut to go all the way through. So I can set my speeds and powers. So I know it'll go through my piece of wood. However, the red, I can just make as an engrave. So I can simply go to the red one, change that to the settings that I need. 300 speed is very, very fast. So it's just been engraved that. The power's too much though. And let's make that 40. 40. That's 40% of the power, but at 300 millimeters a second, very, very fast indeed. So what we've got now is I've just set this so that the blue will cut all the way through the wood, but the red will just be engraved. Now what we've got is our model with all of the instructions needed to put it together, because obviously number 6 here will relate to 6, the number 6 of one of these. So they'll actually make sense when you put them together. At the same time, I can see, as I go in here, I can highlight perhaps part of this. I'm not sure if I can or not. Let's see if I can. Let's go right over there. And I can move that over to there. This one's not kind of very happy, so I think what I'll have to do is move that up slightly. And also that bit there's not very good, so I might have to go back because you can see the problem I might have there. It's a little bit small there, so I may have to go back and change those. It's not too much of a problem, but the main thing I wanted to show you is I can now take this one and bring it into my model, my first drawing, and then we can dispose of our second sheet. What we've got now is a much more user-friendly kind of variation here where we're just using one sheet of material. But there's still quite a bit of waste there, but at least it's better than using two, as I say. So at this point, I'm actually going to close this down and go back to Slicer. Don't want to save that. And let's see if I can actually go back to interlocking spaces here. We're going to have a bit of a break, and then we're going to look at different alternatives, ways of actually constructing in interlocking things in a different ways. And we have somebody's asked if what the manufacturing setting should be, as it's on 3 sheets. That means your sheets are smaller, or your model's a bit too big, and the settings were for 500 wide and 375. It really isn't a massive problem at the moment while we're just learning, but it's important to recognize that we do have to consider materials in terms of sustainability, just to consider that we're not going to waste too much. So we can buy in wood, of course. I think it's for a full sheet of plywood, it's 2440 by 1220. So that's 1 meters 200 by 2.4 meters. And they're the great big sheets of plywood you buy in. But our machine is 1.2 across and 87 high. And so we can kind of go up to that scale. But really a useful kind of plywood size is around about 0.5 meter across. So let's go back into our slicer again. I just want to show you some different variations of this. At the moment, we're looking straight down, and our interlocking slices, that's fair enough, but you might have a design where you might feel that that's not the way to go. Let's have a look at the next one down. It's curve. Now curve, I'm not quite sure how that's working, but it's a different kind of situation here where it's kind of crossed through the center. And of course, don't forget, we can change the angles of these as well, but it's just a slightly different variation of what we had. I'm going to try the next one down. Never used curve before, actually. Radial slices I've used once or twice, and that radial's from one point out. It's kind of better to see it this way. Can you see it's actually from a center point and everything's going out from that center point? And again, you can change that so that it's from the opposite way around and have a play around. But the important thing we're looking at as well is, I think, aesthetically, visually, of what you think works. And it works quite well, I think. The tail's not particularly great at the end there, but it does work quite well. Maybe not at the bottom where it meets here so much. But you can also see we've got these thinner slices, which will kind of slice all the way around, as you can see on the right-hand side there. And we can change the amounts. We've got a lot that we can do here in terms of changing the way this is put together. But just at a flick of a switch, it's really quite incredible, the complexity of what we can do with these simple models. So again, we can change lots of things within that. Quite like that, actually, but let's see if there's anything else there. So we've got folded panels. Now, that's not really of much interest. However, if you are making a piece of sculpture, it's not necessarily easy to stick together, let's say, but what it's given us is a pattern that you can cut out. The laser cutter will actually cut, but I could engrave the lines between them so that you can see where it should be folded as well. So maybe we could make this out of cardboard, or we could make it out of a material that could actually be glued together. But I've never done it, but you can see there's a fantastic resource there. So you could make maybe a model to like a structure perhaps that we can fold over. So that's folded panels again, something I've never used. And then we've got 3D slices there. Not quite sure what this is going to do. And that's just slicing it through the whole thing as we go down. It's a bit like the interlocking slices. But I think the interlocking slices themselves, when we go up, which is at the top here, stack slices, are actually going to give us a drawing, if you know what I mean, on the right-hand side there. So as you can see, our interlocking slices will be on 2 sheets at the moment because it's sliced through the shark, which is fair enough. If we change the direction of that, slice direction, and I'm going to highlight it by clicking first, and then just take that down to the 90 degree. And now we can see we're on 3 sheets, but those 2 we know we can go onto there, and these are just sliced up this way. And again, we seem to have an issue with the top parts here, and I'm not quite sure. You can probably see why here. They're stepped a little bit too much, perhaps. So it's registering that as problematic. So I might change that background again. And the slices are now going through there. Everything's happy with that. There's no kind of major problems. It's showing a bit of a blue outline, but it's still a darker color. I wonder what would happen if we change the slice to maybe help that a little bit, if we can kind of go around this way. So what I've done is I've sliced it in line with the tail a little bit more. Still showing a bit of blue there. I'm not quite sure whether that would be an issue, because I think you could glue them together, no problem at all. And there you have your interlocking shark. And it really is fantastic what you can do with cardboard, for instance, gluing things together.
Ian, if I can, my assumption why it's blue is because if you enlarge the parts for the stacked slices, you see that there are like small holes to somehow interconnect the parts. And
Yes.
I believe that on the smallest one, you can't put the hole. So this is why it's showing on blue, because you can't interconnect them.
Yes, that's true. What I should have mentioned with the stacking slices is that you also get, if you can put like dowling or rods or something between everything, they will actually, rather than just having to glue them by hand, there are actually holes, as the last speaker, I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but as the last person mentioned, and you can see them that on the right-hand side, as you look down, there are these numbers in red, but there is also situation where you can see holes that you can cut all the way through, and then you can put through little bits of wooden doweling or something like that, and it'll locate everything perfectly. So you're absolutely correct there. And the reason why is because they're too small to put those location things in. I've never really bothered with the location things, to be honest. Even with stacking models, I tend to glue them together, you know, quite happily without them. But they're certainly there for use. You can kind of use them to good effect. And it could be wire you poke in there, perhaps. You know, anything really that hold it all into place. That's great. Thank you.
Hi, Ian. Could you re-explain what curve is?
Yes, I'll have a look. I'm not quite sure. I think it's just a slightly different way of putting it together. If I go via the interlocking first, so we have a stack, then interlocking here, and there's the interlocking ones that I was talking about. And then we go down to the next one down, which is curve. Basically, I think it's through an angle, but it's actually given aesthetically more of a curved feel than that kind of boxy interlocking, if you know what I mean. I'm not quite sure. I think we'll have to put a lot more in there. Let's actually just pop that and make that. I'm not sure I can change the sizes there, the axis there, unfortunately, because I've probably done a little bit too much. This does get a bit glitchy. When you've done an awful lot and you go back again and forwards again, you find that the axis doesn't become live. Maybe that's because I've done so much already. I think if I brought this in and just went straight to curve, I think I'd probably be able to change the axis, the number of axis in there. But you can see the idea, can't you? It's just a more, less boxy, a little bit more fluid interpretation of an interlocked object.
Right. And Jack was wondering about the prices of the plywood sheets from the Fab Lab. Is that something that I could provide in the follow-up email?
Yeah, I can tell you now, if you're a student, you will be paying our standard cost of £2.35, I think it is, for a sheet of A4, for one sheet of A4. So it is quite inexpensive. For those of you who aren't a student, I buy it from a company called Technology Supplies Limited. And I think they're under a different, they're owned by a different company, but Technology Supplies are the company I've used for many, many years now, and they're the ones that bring in these sheets of 500 by 375. I get them in packs of 12, I think. I think you can just buy one sheet though as well. But there are people out there, and the reason I buy that is because it's plywood that's been identified as good for laser cutting, because the glue in plywood is really quite bad when you just get cheap ply. And you find it burns really badly, whereas this plywood seems to be really quite good in terms of the glue that holds the whole thing together. So I'd definitely recommend we don't go for cheap materials. You can go for some plywood, and it's so badly kind of thrown together that it just sets fire to itself rather than actually cuts cleanly. So hopefully that's a very long-winded way of saying £2.35 for the students. That's our material cost that they pay. They don't pay anything extra on top. I don't think it would be that much more expensive if you bought it directly.
Yeah, and I would just add, if you ever come to one of our in-person workshops through the Smart Citizens Programme, all materials are free, those workshops.
Yay! Which is fantastic. And I've got to say, I have to say that these courses that are being run, the Design and Make Anything courses, I think they're fantastic. I really do. I'm just going to go back to my interlocking slices.
Well, Ian, just a quick note from Powell saying that if you change the method from custom to by count, you can edit it again.
Oh, fabulous. Let's do that. Thank you so much. How did you know that? Let's go back to our, because I was quite interested in that curve. And now oh, that's brilliant. I can change it. Excellent. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen if I put a lot more of these in. So if I just make that into, say, 14, and make this one, I'm going to use the same 14 just to see what would happen there. And you've got something. It doesn't kind of work with our shape very much, but it would make a fantastic shelf unit. What I'd like us to do is to get a bit familiar with this and actually go to Thingiverse, download a model, bring it in from scratch, and produce our drawing from that, really. If you want to save your drawing, you can, I'm just going to go back again. I'm just going to show you how to do that. And let's say I'm happy with this. I'm just going to go right down to assembly steps there so you can see that you're happy with it first. I'm going to go back again. And then once you've gone, we'll go to get plans. And you can see my plan now is on one sheet. It's a little bit better now. So I'm going to go down to DXF here, file type. And you can see there's PDF, EPS, and DXF. Generally, I save as DXF and PDF as a backup. And that's what I suggest we do, really. We can save them as both. And that way, if it doesn't open, if there's a problem with the DXF, we've got this PDF that we can maybe adapt. So DXF millimeters, export to my computer. And I'd like us all to save what we've got. There's a file name here, and we can call it what we want. I'm just going to put my name, Ian. I'm just going to pop it onto the desktop for now, but you can pop it wherever you like. And hit save. And now we've got that file saved. So at that point, I'd like to start again. I'm not quite sure at this stage whether to go straight to the top here. Modified, do you want to open it? Save it? No, don't want to do that. And we can open a new model. I'm going to cancel that for a moment. And of course, I need a model to bring in. So I'm going to go back to Thingiverse. I'm going to go back. And I'm going to choose a model that I know is going to be a bit difficult. We can choose anything we like. And I suggest you do just that. Anything of interest that you'd like to do. I'm going to use my elephant from the mesh mixer we did before.
I popped the link to Thingiverse in the chat for everyone.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So you can go straight to Thingiverse, or you can go into the browser and pop it in there, and just choose anything you like. Bear in mind, though, if you got something like a face, a human face, because you can get scans as well on here, it doesn't kind of work very well because there's no detail. So I'm looking for something that you can tell what it is virtually straight away. And I know there's a lovely little model. It's not too big. Models that are too big will take ages to process and to appear. So I kind of steer clear from them a little bit. So just be aware that if you have problems and glitches, we can just go and choose another model and bring another model in. So elephant is what I'm after. And there's my elephant, by the way. I know my elephant because it's upside down. I'm going to click on it there, just left click once and select it, and then download it, download all files. So there's my elephant zip file. I'm simply going to drag that onto my desktop. I tend to put things on my desktop only because I'm dyslexic. I don't like having to go search for things. So it's like a visual thing for me. It doesn't have to go there. You can put it in your downloads, no problem at all. I'm going to open that up, and there are my files. There's a bit about licenses, and I think it's important to look at licenses in terms of Creative Commons and things. There's not much information there at all, but it generally means that you can use them, but not for profit. I think that's the most important thing to remember. And there's my elephant. It's inside the zip file, and I'm going to drag that onto the desktop there. Close that down. Okay, now if I go to New, I don't want to save my old model, and I'm going to import my elephant. There it is. Open it up, and it'll come in upside down. It's actually coming on its head. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to me at all, because obviously the drawing that I'm going to take out won't take any notice of the fact that it's that way up. I just have to move my slices and so on. This is going to be a tricky one because we've got the ears, which are almost impossible. We've got the trunk and this as well. So this could actually be quite a tricky one to do. But I'm going to do it anyway. And I'd invite you to have a play for the last half an hour of this session. We're going to come back about 5 to do some questions and answers and stuff. I will stop at any point and try and help you guys, but I'd really like to have a try. You can use the elephant and follow me, or you can download anything you like. And we're going to go through simple stages of scaling it to where we want it to be, of sorting out our material that it's going to be cut out of, and then sorting out a construction type, how we're going to slice it and so on. So I'm going to talk as I'm working. So those of you who wish can follow me, or just go for it and have a go yourself. Please just shout out if you have any problems at all, and I'll do my best to answer any questions or try and solve any problems. I'm looking now. The first thing I'm going to do is change from inches to millimeters, so I can see the size of my elephant, and it's 203 high. So again, I'm thinking, well, I've got maybe 1 or 2 sheets. I can make it small, I can make it larger. If I make it larger, I can get more slices in perhaps, which might help. So maybe I'll make it out of 2 sheets. And if that's the case, then the whole elephant could be just under 500. And if it's 500 as a sheet, maybe, actually no, that'll be masses of sheets, won't it? So perhaps I'll use an elephant on a half of my sheet, and they've got 4. So perhaps, yeah, I'm going to go for round about 250, just under 250 height. I'm going to make it 245. And the reason for that is I don't want to go right to the edge of my wood, because sometimes it's worth kind of keeping within the boundary of our material, within, say, 5 millimeters all the way around. So maybe 245. I can always change that later. So my elephant is now a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to go to my materials, and I'm going to choose, and notice that the material we put in is already on our choices. So when you put a material in, it stays there the next time you open Slicer. So now I've chosen the same plywood. Okay, I'm going to go to my construction, And I'm going for interlocking slices. And there's my first interlocking slice for my elephant. Notice that it's harder to move around and stand the elephant up. So I'm going to leave it on its trunk. It's a bit easier for me to see. And so I can see now we've got our issue here with the trunk and with the parts there. So I think I'm going to have to move the slices so that this one can stay and these ones will be kind of going straight down that way instead. So let's do just that. I'm going to go to slice direction, choose the blue one, and take that down to 90. And just have a quick look. And that's not working either, because can you see I haven't got a central section. So looking at my axis number, I can see at the moment there's only 4. I think my axis running down is going to have to be odd. So I've got one in the middle, which will hold my trunk together. So let's just see what happens when we make that 5. Now I've got my trunk in the middle, and all of a sudden it makes more sense. We can see that everything except for the tusks is working. And the tusks seem to be an issue because they're not actually sticking to anything there, but maybe we could make a few changes and move things around. However, we shouldn't forget that as a lot of us are craftspeople, there's no reason why we can't add trunks. We can't add in the drawing and the technical drawing that we actually get from this. We can't kind of just put the trunk onto it and draw into it. Inkscape, for instance, we can take our DXF and we can import it into Inkscape. If you've done 2D work with me before, and we can certainly do that. I might try moving my axis around to try and kind of line up my tusk there. But you can see this is a very, very kind of intuitive method of working. I think there's also too many of these. It looks very busy, so I'm going to cut down on one of these axes here. So perhaps this one, instead of being 10, I'll make 8 just to see what it looks like. Okay, so that's okay. And it hasn't really made any difference to the trunk. I do want to move the axis to see if I can get this trunk, this kind of tusk in it. So perhaps I'll go to that slice direction and just move that direction so that it might come a little bit more into the trunk itself. It seems to still be a bit of an issue. Okay, so I seem to have solved the trunk problem, but now I have a problem with the ears there. So again, I can go back and have another look. I might try a slightly different way of splitting as well. Just changing my slice direction back if I can. There it is. That's back now. Okay, maybe I'll try a more of a different kind of interlocking section. Let's try that curve that we saw. I'm not happy at all with that, and I think that has a lot to do. So I'm just going to go back to the radial slices from the center there to see what that does. That's coming from the center there, but it doesn't really help me. But if I put more in, it might. So at the moment there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's make that a lot more. Let's make that 10. Now the front legs are all right. The back legs aren't. So maybe I'll put more in again. So instead of 10, I'll make it 12. Still no luck with the back legs, but maybe I can move 1 or 2 of these to get the back legs in. The front legs don't look too bad. They might want to move a bit that way. Let's see if we can. Now at the moment, I'm a little bit worried because I'm showing you stuff that I haven't done myself. But I can see that the trunk's fine. Still haven't got my tusks in there, but I'm just wondering whether I can move this one. I've just highlighted it. I'm going to go to modify form. Can I move that? Yes, I can. Look, you can move that around to your heart's content. Now that to me is fascinating. So I can actually make that so it goes into the center of my leg. I'll do the same with this one. Modify form, and this time I'll bring that in to the center of that leg. Looking at the tusks now, I think I might actually need more things in there to get that, but I'm kind of happy with that, to be honest. Because don't forget, I can adapt this and put my own version of trunks in, and so it's an idea. And again, I'm a bit better off actually moving around this way to show. But you can see it seems to be quite happy now. The body itself works really well there. I don't necessarily need these on a trunk, but it defines a kind of thickness there. So let's see if I can put another few on here. I'm going to go from, it's not working, so I'm going to go from custom to by count, as somebody quite happily mentioned before, which is really handy for me. And instead of 12, I'm going to make that 14. Of course, they've moved now, so the legs kind of have to be looked at, but it's also not giving me anything for these trunks. But I've got one here that I can move. So I'm going to do some work now on this one. Modify my form and bring it so that it's actually in line with our trunk. I'm hoping. No, it's gone all over the place really. To find it quite hard to get. Now, has that given me? Yes, there it is. There's our trunk on there. Let's try our other one, which is, I'm having to click off, by the way, so that I can highlight this one and then modify the form, and I'll bring that one down to go through that trunk. Let's see, and there it is. There's our trunk there. I say trunk, I meant tusks. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. And then I can do the back legs. The front legs will need doing as well because they're interlocking, but just on the very edge there. So I'll start off with them, bring them into the center, and I can click. I can do it without having to click off, actually. I thought I'd have to click off each time, but I don't. I can just click on it. This one here, just click on it to highlight it first, and then move it. And I want to move it into the center of my legs. This one here, I'll highlight and move to the center of our legs again. And I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that, in fact. So now that I've got my model, I'm just looking at our board here and looking at the sheet. And I can see lots and lots of little things here. We've got 1, 2, 3, and these to be put into there as well. I think I'm going to have to do this again. And we had our height at 245. So if I did this again and made my height less, I could probably fit that onto one sheet. However, if I'm really careful, these little ones here can probably go across there. This, I could probably look at this and kind of move them and flip them and so on to get a little bit more room and get those on. So I'm going to hope that I can actually nest these myself and physically move each one of them and spend a lot more time on the nesting than having to go back and redo this again. But if I was going to make lots of them, I would certainly consider starting again and make it a little bit smaller, just so that I'm actually using less material. However, looking at these figures here, there's a lot of dead space in the middle here. And an average look at that, I could possibly get these onto one sheet if everything kind of crammed in really close to each other. I could probably get that. So I'm going to go with it. Let's go to our assembly steps. And it comes out in cardboard. It doesn't matter. because I can make it in cardboard. However, if your cardboard is 6 millimeters thick, be aware that we should have actually set up a material setting with our size of our cardboard and our thickness in there as well. So perhaps I should stick to plywood, which is what we have set up. And I just want to have a quick look at how this is put together. So I'm going to start. It's actually at end, this slider at the moment. You can see there's a little arrow at the very end of it, and I can drag that all the way back. And that's what I like to do, right back to the beginning. So we've just got one object. That object, if we look at our drawing, is down at the bottom here for me. And then I can just slide across and I can see the way this is put together. And as I say, once you've actually saved this and you've just got your drawings, you have got details on there in terms of what you can engrave onto it. But it's really good just to get your phone and actually show just a very, very quick film of how this is put together on your phone itself. All that information in terms of which part is which and how it actually goes together is within this sliding thing. And it could just be a couple of seconds of film that you can refer to if you get stuck. So once we've done that, we've got our elephant. I can simply go down to the bottom, which is Get Plans. There's my drawing. It's a DXF. I'm going to go to my computer. And onto the top there, I'm going to put elephant. And I am actually going to pay for this to be done. I may have to make it a bit smaller. I may have to do some jiggling around. And maybe I'll have to find a bit of scrap wood where the others can be cut out of as well. But I'm certainly not going to cut into a new piece of wood. It's not expensive, but it's not good practice. We do need to make sure that we've actually got this in one sheet rather than two, I think. But I'm sure I can do that. So I'm going to call it elephant. Let's call it drawings. A zip file again, and it's on the desktop. Just going to save that. Elephant drawings. Yes, there they are. I'm just going to open that up. And there's my drawing 1 and 0. And that can go into my software. And then I can try and kind of fit that together. But the important thing is that's ready for 3D printing. I'm going to go back now to here. Let's go back to our 3D object here. And if you go to the top band and move across, we've got save, and you can save this slicer document. So it'll open up and your elephant or whatever you're working on will be on there already. We've got 5 minutes left, but basically in Mesh Mixer, you can import a model, and on the left-hand side here, we can see these things. We can see edit. And if you left click on edit, one of the things you've got is make solid. If you hit make solid, it becomes a solid, and then you can export it out again. So hopefully that's enough of a kind of a hint that if you've got a model that won't open in Slicer, that's the way around. We can just make it into a solid and then bring it back in again.